Having ownership in an agency myself, one of my favorite things, and I'll mention, having managed sales forces or sales agents for almost 20 years. One of my favorite things about Amped is the weekly managers talking point. So what this looks like is when you meet with your people, this report that gets sent out weekly to you in an email format, you're going to get one of these for each of your sales agents in the agency. And this is powerful because you can sit down with them. And maybe you have somebody you won't sit down with every single one of them, but those that maybe are behind schedule or way ahead of schedule, and you kind of want to sit down and either congratulate them or coach and management. That's really what this is for, is to help coach and help people improve what they're doing. So this gives you a lot of key information to make that conversation more productive. And so, for example, this is just an example here, but what this report will include is, of course, the name of the employee, and then you're going to see where they're at for the month. So what their production versus their goal is. Then you'll see this week's production. What did they put on the books this week? You're going to see active pipeline. So what's sitting in their pipeline? Do they have too few and they need to get more leads in the pipeline? Do they have too many? Maybe they've got stuff sitting and churning, and so it's sucking up a lot of time while they just churn and feel like they're busy, but they're actually not moving anyone through the pipeline. I mean, as important as is, the goal is to bind policies, it's also important to snooze things that aren't moving ahead. If they're not going anywhere, snooze them out and get them out of that active pipeline, because otherwise it can make people feel busy and it hurts their focus on what the ones that they actually can win on. So if they've got that, you can really tell a lot by how, if this list is too long or too short. Do we need to add deals, or do we need to simplify and clear things out and get you focused on few and clear some of these out of the list? So that's huge. Lost in the last 7 days. I don't like that word lost. We'll update this. Hopefully the reports you get won't have the word lost in them. But because what I would rather say is snoozed, was snoozed in the last 7 days. So what that means is anytime they snooze something for the future, so they're not binding it, but they're putting it out to a future date, this will show up in this list. So if anything they've snoozed out for 6 months or 12 months in the future, that's great. I wouldn't beat them up too much for that. You want them, you don't want them, you want to encourage them, like I said, to keep their active deals list clean and focused. So that's okay. If they have a deal that's not moving very well, of course, they need to communicate that to the decision maker, if it's appropriate or not. If they're just not responding and they followed up 100 times and things or whatever, a dozen times or whatever's appropriate and things aren't moving ahead. Yeah, it's time to get it out of the active deals list and push it to a different date. So into the future. So that's what that list is for. You can kind of look at that and just see if they're maybe giving up too quick or not giving up, quick enough, and kind of go through and review that with them. Sometimes you might see somebody on there, hey, I think I know them over there. Let me call and see if I can help save this deal for you. So that's a great little piece of information. Deals you refer to others, so the handoffs. This is powerful. Every time you meet with somebody, you can say, wow, you've sent 15 deals over to the life guy or whatever. And so that's really cool. So because your sales agents will make money for you, not only directly by closing deals, but by supporting and cross-selling and cross-promoting other people in the agency. And so you definitely want to acknowledge that and see what's going on. So that shows up in this report. And then your 6-month rolling production. I love this because one of the mistakes agency owners and sales managers can make is when they look at any one moment of time, they can have, so let's say they're looking at an agent and they look at what they're doing today. And it doesn't look like they're doing well. The numbers are bad. It's easy to think, well, yeah, but generally they're doing really good. So this is kind of an anomaly. And for whatever reason, they have the impression that's not data driven. They just have this impression that they're good agents. And so they never really come down on them for having a bad month because they have this impression that all the other months were good. Or vice versa. That can happen too. So what this does is it gives you hardcore data on the last 6 months so that you can really see how they're trending. Are they doing better? Are they doing worse? What's the deal? And that can really help change the tone or what the priority is in that meeting that you have with them. So that is the manager's talking point. Again, just make sure your email, there's other, you're going to get the daily production report, weekly production report, and then this manager's talking points. Just make sure your email is in Amped correctly and you will get these. But yeah, use them. If you don't have a lot of agents, you might be able to do this with every single one of them on a periodic basis, maybe even weekly in your sales meeting. If you don't have a lot and there's time to do that, if there's not time, I'm a big fan of using the sales meeting, and there's courses on this. Go into the leadership tips and go through all this stuff. But the sales meeting really should be about, there should be enough time in there to introduce or revisit a certain process in the sales process, or a certain idea or principle, and then actually go through it by looking at your playbook and making sure that they're, really be clear about what that process is and how it gets done, what the steps are to get that done. And then everybody can role play or do whatever they do to practice to try to make it into a habit. And so if you do too much of this, just reviewing reports, you don't want it to cut into that time. So sometimes don't just turn that into a whole bunch of these little individual meetings where you just go over all this data. Now, keep that as a kind of a group setting, and then use these for individualized coaching on the side is how I would recommend you use these. Okay, hope that's helpful.